to dream feed or not to dream feed? That is the question of today's podcast episode. And I just told Beck that I had this really dorky way that I wanted to introduce this episode, and there it was.
You really nailed it.
Thank you. Thank you. I live with many thespians. And so our worlds have collided. Sleep consulting meets Hamlet.
Yeah,
But that
it's
is
a
what
great
we're
question,
talking.
though, isn't it? It's a great question.
It is. And look, I, even as a mother with a young baby, have asked myself that same question. Should I go in at 10:30 and offer my baby a feed in the hopes of getting a longer stretch?
A bit longer.
I've dabbled with it. I have lots of families, as I'm sure you do too, Beck, that still have a dream feed, are wondering, a dream feed curious maybe, and how we're going to just talk about it. This isn't a prescription. This isn't, you don't have to do it. If it's working for you, fantastic. As always, we're just going to chat about what a dream feed is, how we would use it, and why we wouldn't use it.
Oh, yeah.
Does that sound
and
right?
There's so many points. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many variations to the way people introduce a dream feed. So I think that we might just go in with the average Joe Blow dream feed.
Yeah, the most common scenario we see.
The most common. Yeah, which is families, putting their little ones to bed and then waking their little ones around that 10:30 mark to offer a nice big feed, and then get them back down in the hopes that they'll do another long stretch, and then hopefully start reducing and eliminating milk feeds over time. I guess that's the main aim.
And that is the goal, right, of the dream feed, is that parents are hoping if I feed them now, I'll get a 4, 5, 6, however long stretch. It's to prolong the time between wakings.
Yeah, and it's often introduced, from the newborn stage. So, and it can work. I was, as a nanny, I had to do the dream feeds with, all my little charges and all the things, and it worked really well. When it came to my own 3, I still implemented the dream feed at that point. Well, at the end of the day, that was like all I knew at that point, and it worked brilliantly. But there is work involved. It doesn't always organically create a situation where your little one is naturally pushing out feeds through the rest of the night and then sleeping these nice big long stretches. You are still going to come up against challenges, and I guess it's knowing how the dream feed works and how it is best utilized, in the same way that we're always aiming towards reducing and eliminating as babies grow, like in terms of their milk calories overnight. So how it can work for families.
Yeah. Well, maybe if we start with how we would use it as sleep consultants / mothers, and then I've got a few reasons as to why I don't commonly use it. And if anyone follows me online, I often make TikToks and reels about why, as a sleep consultant, I don't usually use dream feeds. So I think then we can talk about those examples in case it resonates with families as well that are listening.
Okay, cool. So ordinarily you have a fresh little bubba and you're introducing a dream feed at this age. This is typically the only stage that I would introduce a dream feed. So you've got a new little one, you're kind of establishing a pattern throughout the course of the day and overnight, and you're wanting to go to bed yourself, and you want to sort of get a good few hours. So typically your little one is going down around the 7:30, 8 o'clock maybe mark. And I'm going to talk about a little baby that's probably 6 to 8 weeks, around this sort of age. Typically a little one of this age, and maybe all the way up to say 3 months, they're going to be feeding 3 times a night. So that is typical. Some will do less, obviously, but you're aiming for around
I'm sure there's
3.
also some that will do more.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I forgot about those ones. But I guess the reason why parents are wanting to put the dream feed in is to prevent that from happening. So you do the investment feed at 10:30. So ordinarily your little one is asleep, and the idea is that you go in, you wake them up, you offer, your boobs or your bottle, you change their nappy, you give them a good burp, and you put them back down. And that at this age is probably going to take you 40 to 45 minutes. Like, it's not
Yeah.
a super quick process. Like, it is a quick one. You are investing. You do want to offer the full feed. So you put them back down, and then the idea behind it is that then you get your longer stretch from that point onwards. So you've preempted the waking, you've gone in, you've initiated the feed, and then they're going to sleep their potential up to another 3 hours, maybe four if you're really
Yeah.
lucky, towards the
As
next feed.
opposed to if you've gone to bed at around 10, you've finally fallen asleep
Mm,
only to be woken 50 minutes later
yes.
for an age appropriate feed, and in which
Yep.
case you're hurtled awake and
Yeah, that's right.
miss that longer stretch.
The other idea behind it is that you're initiating the feed and that your little
Mhm.
one isn't waking and asking for a feed. So that becomes a little bit more important as they get older. So, after that 4 month mark, but it is sort of still an active form of sleep work because you
Yep.
are initiating it. So what will typically happen is you're probably at 6 to 8 weeks or 6 to 12 weeks. You've got a feed around 10:30 that you're doing. There's another feed probably around that 2:30 mark. And then you're having like a really small buffer feed just to get through, probably around that 4:35ish to get you to start the day a little later. As your little one grows, what will tend to happen is, say now they're in the 4 month mark, now you're still doing the dream feed around that 10:30 stage, and then they're able to do a longer period until the
Mhm.
next feed. So that might take you to around 3 a.m. You're still doing a feed and you're getting them back down. Um, when you go through the 4 month regression, you are going to have multiple wakings that crop up. And so, regardless of if they're really well fed or not, they're still going to wake and sort of require some resettling or, assistance to go back off to sleep or however you want to do it, if you want to do some sleep training or whatnot. Um, Often parents will get a little confused at this age because you've
Mm.
given the dream feed at 10:30, but then they're popping awake at, midnight, 1 o'clock. And a lot of families at that point will maybe not realize that this is the regression that's happening and it's a sleep cycle maturation. And so instead of thinking, oh gosh, we just need to resettle that, they go into a little bit of a panic and then wonder if their little one is going through a growth spurt. And then they will tend to wake at that 1 o'clock mark. So the key to this is when you're establishing a dream feed, you are holding on to these two nice big feeds in the middle of the night. And that can actually help you to then decipher what wakings are an inability to self settle and which wakings are
Hunger.
genuine hunger related.
Mm.
So that can be a real benefit for the dream feed. In terms of how the dream feed progresses from 4 months onwards, you're holding the 10:30 feed steady, but you are gradually moving that last one later and later. So if you're habitually in a 3 a.m. sort of wake and feed scenario, say you're doing that for 6 weeks or so, maybe less, and you're sort of like, oh gosh, that's habitual, like it's at the same time every night. You're
Every
banking on
morning.
it,
Yeah.
yeah. Then you would sort of have the idea of, okay, well, I would have the idea for you guys to actually go and resettle the 3 a.m. wake and then feed the next one. And then so gradually you're sort of pushing that last feed out. It gets smaller, more calories go into the day.
And then, Beck, just for listeners listening, um,
Yes.
what age would that part of the process be more applicable to? So we've talked about where we would bring it in for the 6 to 8 week old teeny tiny babies. And then as you're looking to nudge out that second feed once it's become habitual, what age do you generally suggest families start to do that?
If it's not already happening around that 4 month mark, that's the idea
Yep.
behind the dream feed, is that you are starting to actively work towards pushing it out. I would, between 4 and 6 months, it's more than fine to have two feeds overnight. However, you can have one feed overnight. Like
Yep.
if you're actively working towards that, you can. Um, the idea behind the dream feed is it gives you that ability to work on it, and you're always moving. So often by, say, 5 months, most little one, or most families, if you're wanting the dream feed to work for you, you should really be at a point where they're going down at bedtime, having the dream feed around 10:30, and then going all the way through until say,
Yes.
6:37 in the morning. Like that's the ultimate goal behind the dream feed. Um, and if you're not, then this is your sign to work on extending that second feed out, making it later and smaller. Um, and then you hold on to that dream feed until solids have become established. And so this could be 6.5 months. You've started to do that introduction phase, and then you slowly whittle the dream feed down, like mil by mil or half boob by half boob, and then eventually you do away with it. So that's the
Yeah.
seamless run for a dream feed. It's something that you really only keep in until solids have been established, and then from that point onwards, your calorific needs are taken
Yeah, and I
over.
think that's a really good point as to we're waiting for the solids to be established because we do talk to and work with families that 10, 11 months, even older sometimes, they've still got this dream feed in place and it's become a bit of a crutch
Yeah.
because they then become scared. This is the thing that's been holding our sleep together
Mm.
overnight. But we don't know what to expect if we now move away from it. And so that's sometimes what I see. And one of the reasons why sometimes I think maybe it's a variable we don't need so that we can future proof a little bit and you're not left with this 11-month-old who's
Mm.
probably really habitualized that they know that they get these calories in at this time and they're going to be a little bit louder about it when they don't get it.
Yeah.
It can become a bit of a crutch later on. It's always possible to get rid of. It's nothing scary. It's sometimes just more the idea of, oh gosh, we've had this for so long. What does
Mm.
sleep look like without it? Um, you go.
I was just going to say that if you've got a little one who is dream feeding and perhaps they are a little older, the simple process is just by moving things. So let's just say you've held on to the dream feed because you're really scared to get rid of it. Like that's most families,
Yeah,
don't change anything that's not broken, and like that's a
exactly.
matter as well. But
Yeah.
a lot of little ones too, like once the solids have been established, if you've got a dream feed in the mix, what you might commonly find is that they're eating really well through the day. They're having their dream feed around 10:30, but then at 7 o'clock, they're not that interested in taking a full milk feed. And
Yes.
so that is a really clear green light that you need to move on the bottle or the breastfeed overnight at the dream feed. And so you just make it smaller and actually you make it earlier as well. So while you're doing that, so instead of 10:30, you make it 10:15 and a smaller bottle. So they're doing a longer gap with smaller milk. You're gradually reducing it and bringing it earlier to mix it all up so that there is a bit of change there so that you can then, if you have to, confidently resettle. And you should be really confident to resettle because if your little one is sleeping from 7 till, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., somewhere around that sort of time frame, and they're only having a dream feed, they're not really waking overnight, they've got amazing skill set there.
Yes.
Like they are waking and putting themselves back off to sleep. If you have a habitual wake at 10:30 and you're wanting to resettle that without milk, don't be afraid to use some resettling at that time because your little one can do it all night long and they will be able to do it at 10:30 as well.
Yeah. Full transparency, even
Mm.
as I listen to you talk about it, the mother in me thinks I can't be bothered with any of this. And I think that's probably infiltrated a little bit of the way I work as a sleep consultant
Mm.
is I I I don't often use a dream feed anymore. I used to when I first started, and I think dream feeds also go in waves of how popular
Yeah.
they are and who's talking about sleep at what time and what they're sort of suggesting. The other thing is that in Melbourne, the very popular residential sleep school that is part of their program is that they do a 10:30, 11 p.m. dream feed for pretty much every baby. It's their
Mm.
protocol. So it's quite popular here. I Here are a couple of reasons why
Mm.
I often don't use it. One is I don't want to wake up, maybe because I go to bed earlier myself. So I think I'm going to let a baby sleep for as long as possible, because you never know, they might actually go until midnight or 1 a.m. And
Mm.
have I introduced a waking or calories unnecessarily that I then at some point need to listen to this episode and figure out how I'm going to wean it down or bring it earlier or push out the second feed. Whereas if I can sort of follow the natural hunger patterns of my baby overnight, and we know that nights usually fall into place first, then I probably sit on the side of, can I watch what is actually going to happen? In saying that, nights for me, even with newborns, have never been horrific. And
Mm.
neither of them have gone through the regression with the 4 month sleep cycle change. So it's very easy for me to say, well, I'll just wait for them to sleep longer, stretches
Mm.
overnight. And they did. The other thing is that sometimes when I've done it as a sleep consultant, so one of the ways that sleep consultants can use it is, let's say you have multiple overnight wakings happening and maybe you are feeding at all of them or at a lot of them, is that rather than teaching a baby that they wake, they cry, they get fed, you can preempt it, you feed them, and then you know that as a dream feed, 30 minutes prior to their usual waking. So if they always wake at 12, you go in and give them a dream feed at 11:30. You sort of beat them to the punch. That means that every waking after that, you can confidently resettle knowing they've already had a
Mm.
feed. The problem that I have hit
Mm.
a lot of times actually is that babies outsmart that.
Oh
And I
yeah.
don't know if it's just the babies that I work with. I work with a very clever pattern seek. I mean, they all are, but some just they figure it out faster than
Oh yeah.
others,
Yeah.
and so they start preempting it. And so let's say we were doing that 11:30, they start waking at 11:15, and then
Mm.
they start waking at 11, knowing that hang on, something happens around this time, and so the dream feed, it's not doing what I want it to do, which
Mm.
is creating clarity between what's a feed and what's a resettle.
Mm.
And then we've got these unnecessary wakings. The other thing is that sometimes I've also worked with babies that don't want to take a full feed.
Yeah.
And I'm then left with like, oh, they took 30 meals. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to be allowed to be genuinely hungry in a few hours, or they just fall asleep on the breast,
Mm.
and we're trying to rouse them, and they won't take the complete investment feed that I have written in the plan. And sometimes I have worked with babies that will take the full feed and then they are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and
Mm.
we're then actively sleep training them back down.
Mm.
And I just think, could we have just let them sleep? They then woke at 11:30. I usually put in more like a, nowadays, okay, we're going to do no feeds before 11. That means that everything before 11 becomes a resettle, and with your sleep training technique or your resettling technique of choice, first waking after 11 becomes your full investment feed. We move on to 4 hours after that, and we just kind of go down that path.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, I know that all makes sense in my head, but does it make
Yeah,
sense
no,
as to the
absolutely.
the snags that families hit and that I hit and have? It's been a huge part of my learning as a sleep consultant, being like, I keep trying this, and babies
Mm.
keep outsmarting me. They don't
Yeah,
follow the
yeah.
plan.
I very rarely see it work amazingly when you put it
Mm.
in at an older for an older age group.
Yes.
So so one of the real benefits to a dream feed is for type A personalities
Yes.
that say a new parent who they just need to have a plan. You need to have a plan. You know what to need.
Yeah.
Like you feel so much more confident and better,
Yeah.
and you know what you get. And so that's one thing that you can put in place, and you've got a goal that you're working towards. Where when you've got newborns, it feels like you're just floundering and you're just sort of moving day to day. Like there is a
Yeah.
specific plan in place for the dream feed. So I recognize that that can work for a lot of parents. They love that aspect, but it's not something that now as a sleep consultant that I put in unless we have multiples.
I was going to say,
So
let's talk about twins, because
yeah,
you had reminded me of this when I worked with twins not too long ago, that one of
mm,
the I quote unquote easy ways to
yeah,
get them sort of on the same track is we like to sleep train them as one baby.
yeah,
And in order to do that, it's common to have a baby wake. There's often an easier twin. and maybe one that's doing a 6 hour stretch and one that's waking 3 times in that time. So to get them all on the same page, we dream feed them, and then we treat them as one baby for the rest of the night, and that can be incredibly helpful.
Yes, absolutely, because we want to minimize how many times mum and dad are getting up, to sort things out. And also we kind of want in terms of calories and redistributing milk through the night back into the day, we can't be sort of doing these mental calculations, like,
No.
baby A has taken 130 mils, like baby two, as
Yeah.
and so you're
There's
trying to
enough
do all
mental load already, even just with
yes.
one baby, let alone with multiples.
So that is a really important part, and well, an important place to start, I think, with twins. And it doesn't necessarily always move super smoothly like it can. But the twins that I just recently worked with, one would smash a bottle and the other wouldn't, and they would only
Yeah.
take. And it really highlights too, like twins are just those fantastic little creatures where you think because they're so similar and like they're literally identical that they would share the same sort of ability to
No.
take good milk but one would be totally happy to go 10 hours without a milk feed while the other one would be like, no, I want to suck back a 240 mil at 2 a.m. So it was sort of,
Yeah.
it was really, that one was a little trickier, but we always start the process with a dream feed to try and ascertain where everyone's at
Yeah.
and get a really consistent settling plan in place so that there is some confidence behind a good stretch where we can go, okay, they've just had a feed, and we can apply the techniques and so forth that we need to get things on track.
Ascertaining where everyone is at, I think, is the perfect description. And my goal is to keep sleep and sleep training and fixing sleep problems as simple for
Mm.
a family as possible. And so I think now, with the way that I work, and with that being the emphasis, that's why I usually don't do it, because I feel like it's then a variable that I'm then having to get them to calculate, do it all, unless it's twins, as we just said. But if you've just got a singleton and we've got a great day feeding plan
Mm.
and we're looking at going into the night very clear as to what is a feed and what is a resettle, I usually don't even wean down the dream feed. I just drop it and we have more scheduled times so that night one, great, we're going to feed here and resettle here, because 9 times out of 10, what I see is that when we nail self settling at bedtime, and maybe that first waking, let's say they go to bed at 7 and then they have a bit of a waking at 9, let's say, and they've had these opportunities to master the skill of self settling, they will already sleep through a longer stretch. It happens
Yeah.
all the time, and
Yeah.
parents cannot believe it. And so,
Yeah.
what they then do is, oh my goodness, my baby slept through until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Fantastic. They have
Mm.
just shown you they can organically sleep until 2. They have dropped the dream feed. They have dropped even my scheduled 11:30 p.m. feed or whatever it was. 2 a.m. is now our new benchmark. We're now going to move into the rest of this plan with no feeds before 2 a.m.
Mm.
because it's not me telling you that they can do that. They have just shown you. You have just enjoyed this long stretch of sleep. We've now dropped the second. Everything starts to nudge out and
Mm.
it gives it back to the day. So that's how I work. Unless it is twins, I don't usually bring it back in. And even as I say that out loud, I know that in my 5 to 12 month sleep guide, it says if you haven't already got a dream feed in the mix, don't bring it in.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's no need to do it.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I don't, I can count. Yeah, unless it's multiples, we're not bringing the dream feed in, and it's not usually an option. Um, Two say if you are dream feeding, and I want to remind families, and this is going to come across like, oh, I might sound a bit like, oh, if your baby,
I'm listening.
I don't want anyone to get annoyed with me. Um, it is not a dream feed if your little one is waking for the feed at 10:30.
Yes,
Let me
very good
reiterate that.
point. Yeah.
Because a lot of the time I'll have some intake forms come through, and it is called a dream feed, but their little one is waking.
Yep.
If your little one is waking for it, it's not. You have to go in and initiate that dream feed. And sometimes what will happen is, particularly in the early days, is that it is habitual, and babies are habitual thinkers, so they will actively wake in expectation of this feed. If that
Yes.
happens, you actually have to delay. This is the key to
Yeah.
keeping this.
Yeah.
You have to get them back to sleep and then wait until they're in a deep sleep phase. So 20
And
minutes after they've
feed.
fallen asleep,
Yeah.
and then you feed. And you've got to get that back on track. And sometimes that might be a whole week of like, oh God, this feels butchered, but then it
Yeah.
will sort of come back. It's a long game. The dream feed is a long game. So just be prepared that if it does happen where your little one starts waking, they are now in this habitual pattern, and you do have to do the work of getting them back off to sleep. The big main reason why families love to do a dream feed, and they may not know the reason for this, but the reason it was designed was because the first 5 to 6 hours of the night is deemed really deep sleep.
Yes.
And so by doing the dream feed, by initiating that feed and like pumping the tanks full, the thought process behind that is that you've interrupted that sleep process. And then so the deep sleep phase then moves from the end of that feed to the next
It
one.
shifts. Yeah. A bit of a
Yeah, it
wake to
shifts.
sleep technique.
Yeah. I don't think scientifically that's correct, but that's the idea was behind that. Scientifically, I don't think that that's actually what's happening at that point. You're just creating big full milk tanks to
Yeah.
settle and relax our little ones to do that next stretch.
I just had a thought based on what you're talking about before with, the younger babies, so the 6 to 8 weeks and maybe even the 3 to 4 month stage, which is when I think it can work. It can work really well. It also can be a really great tool for, as you said, parents that sit more on the type A parenting
Yeah.
end of the parenting
Yeah.
spectrum. Is that I also think that if your baby is bottle fed or combination fed between breast and bottle, it also means that a lot of families can divide and conquer a little bit. So
Yeah.
rather than, it's very hard with an exclusively breastfed babies, which both of mine were. So if I was doing the dream feed, it was still on me. Hence why I was probably like, I'm going to choose sleep over waking a baby. And
Yeah.
also, I feel like it's hard breastfeeding. Like they wake up. I got to
Yes.
like
Yeah.
unclip and do all the things. But it means that, let's say, maybe a mother that is breastfeeding some of the time, she can go to sleep, and the other parent or partner
Yes.
or the night nurse, whoever it is, can then do a bottle feed and take over. And so the breastfeeding parent can sleep longer. Equally, if it is an exclusively bottle fed baby, then you can tag team who gets a longer stretch of sleep that's uninterrupted. And so I do understand that can be a really nice teamwork way
Yeah.
of making those sleep deprivation trenches feel a little bit easier and also share the load. And feeding is bonding too. So it can be really nice to say, hey, could you do I've breastfed all day. I've pumped, or here's the bottle of formula. Could you go and do the dream feed? And that's a quiet, tender moment for the other parent to hold their baby and feed them.
I remember 2 of my babies were born during the Olympics, so different Olympic.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. And
you timed
so
that well.
the I think my husband was super happy because he had like someone out there to watch
To
with.
watch. Yeah.
But I remember thinking, God, I just want to go to bed. I just want to go
Yeah.
to bed, and I'd be on the couch and I'd be watching the Olympics, waiting for the 10:30 feed to happen and dozing on and off and just dying to go to bed. But on the flip side of that, and see, this is that investment that, if you're locked into the dream feed, this is where it can work, like I just
Yep.
would feed and then put them back. So I just want to touch on the actual dream feed. This is turning into like a bigger chat than we did, but I thought, I
I
don't
love
know
it.
if we're going to
Settle in.
revisit this again, but in order to, some little ones are very, very good at getting on the boob or on the bottle, and then they just go for it and they're
Yeah.
really into the feed, and then it's done. You burp them and you put them back down. And that might take, 5 or 10 minutes, once they're a little bit older.
That
Then
is
there's the
the
ones that are
dream of
just,
the dream feed.
Dream of the dream feed.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they're a little bit younger and you've actually got to work at it because they just want to sort of jump onto the boob or the bottle and then they just want to conk back out again. Because remember,
Yeah.
you are initiating that wake. They're not waking for it.
Yeah.
So there are times when you actually have to work on the feed. And so I remember with the Olympics that they whoever it was, they whatever child, whoever it was, whatever baby it was
Bec's
applied.
got three. don't know their names, don't know their birthdays.
Oh, I've got Dexter, I've got Murphy and Harlow. But Murphy wasn't an Olympic baby, but Harlow was. And I just remember thinking at that time, oh my gosh, you're not feeding well. So I would actually have to I'd have to wake them up. So
Yeah.
10:30 would roll around. They wouldn't wake up properly. I'd have to take them into the lounge. The Olympics were blaring, unswaddle, wake them up. Rah, like they'd have to cry
Yeah.
for a good 5 minutes. Then they'd go on
Rouse them.
one boob.
Yeah.
I'd burp them. Then I would re-swaddle. And then I would go into the dark room, offer the second side, burp again, and then put them back down. So it was a bit of a process, but
Yeah.
it brought me great sleep. It brought me excellent sleep. I wouldn't take it back. There are
Yeah.
times where I think to myself, I know that they could have slept through the night. They were incredible sleepers. Like they didn't need the dream feed. However, I held on to it until the solids were established.
Yes, but see, that's the other thing. You had a plan of how to get rid of it. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
parents, it can work really well. And maybe they do all of this work and they establish it and then they're left with it.
Yep.
And then it can become a bit of a pest.
Yeah. So the big tips are if you're waking your little one, if your little one is waking for the feed, remember to resettle them and then feed them once they're asleep again.
Yes.
And if they're only taking, and you want to persevere with your dream feed, if they're only taking small amounts, you may need to actively encourage them to wake up fully before offering the
Yes.
feed and then putting them back down. And that's not always such a bad thing, particularly with the younger babies, because if they're expending a little bit more energy in that moment while you're doing the feed, then they are going to be able to sleep a better stretch too. So while it feels like, oh God, that was hectic, it can work in your favor.
Yeah. And equally, if a dream feed sounds too complex or you've been trying, you've dabbled, and it's just not really taking, babies can have incredible sleep without the dream feed. And if you are then looking at this from a sleep training, fixing a sleep problem, unless you have multiples, Bec and I really don't use it as a technique and a tactic. There are many other great ways to get the calories in and get long stretches and nudge out overnight feeds. And it's what we do every single week without a dream feed. So it's choose your own adventure, as all things parenting. We probably left you with more questions than answers. But if it was me, if I have a third baby, I might try it every now and again, but it would not be part of my plan.
And I would say to you, Sally, you've got to pick it and stay with it.
And I can't
or
be
don't
bothered.
pick it at all.
Yeah, it's one or the other. All right. Well, that's the dream feed chat. Did we answer the elusive to dream feed or not to dream feed? You could do either, and here are the things to look out for. Here is when we would look to get rid of it, and here is why we wouldn't use it, particularly if you're on the Sally side of things. We just can't be bothered with any extra wakings or calculations or work. I'll be asleep.
Yeah. And then your baby will wake 10 minutes later, but that's okay. Like, don't worry. Like, it's fine.
Of course. And then I wonder why I'm so tired. Yeah, I've only got myself to blame, but I made my bed and I can lie it or not lie
Sally,
it.
if I had another baby, I know we're wrapping this up, but if I had another baby, I actually wouldn't use a dream feed.
There you go.
Yeah. Because now I've been doing this for so many years that I don't think it's necessary. Well, I see the benefits, I see the merit in it and why it works, but I'd be super keen to have another. Well, I'm not super keen to have another one. Sorry.
This jumped in.
I would be super keen to see how it went without using a dream feed.
Okay, well, maybe we do a case study. If and when I have a third baby, we'll follow along.
Oh my God,
and
yes.
I'll document how many times he or she wakes.
Yeah,
this
I'm
is not an announcement, by the way. It's just, it's a future plan if the stars align. And but yeah, that would be great to watch it all naturally play out?
Well, maybe you can have twins and then you have
Ah,
one. You can have a
yes.
dream feed baby and then a natural wake
Yeah,
baby.
yeah, and
Yeah.
A
Oh my
A B
God.
testing. But
Yeah.
here's the thing. My first baby slept 12 hours at 12 weeks. My
Mm,
second baby, who was a very tricky sleeper, and he's the one I like tried the odd dream feed. And I was like, this isn't working. This feels so messy.
yeah.
Um, he slept 12 hours at 15 weeks. And there's just
Yep.
part of me that thinks, and keep in mind, we had no feeding issues, we had no growth issues, none of that. So
Yep.
it's easy for me to say this. But if I had bought in a dream feed, would they have done that?
Yeah, interesting. And I guess for scope too, just so that if we while we're on the dream feed train, um, how it worked for me was my firstborn slept 7 to 7 with a dream feed from 14 and a half weeks.
Yep.
My
Amazing.
second was 7 to 7 until with a dream feed at 9.5 weeks, and then Harlow 7 to 7 at 7.5 weeks with a dream feed.
Yeah.
So they were all pretty good sleepers, and that's why it makes me wonder, had we have not dream feed, if we would have had similar
Yeah.
kids. However, it mentally I was really happy to keep that feed in,
And I think
and it
that is
ticked. Yeah.
such a good that's where I would say yes, do it. If mentally it works to
Mm,
give you that confidence
mm,
and to help you get better sleep, that is reason enough to pop in a
mm.
dream feed in those. Absolutely. Because otherwise what I suspect, and this is the sleep consultant hat going, not that you not that you asked
Yep.
me and your babies are teenagers now, but I suspect Harlow would have done 7 till 2 a.m. You would have done a full feed and she'll have gone back to 7.
Yeah, that's right. But you know what? I'd rather be up at 10:30. That was at that point. At
That's
that
the other thing.
point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
we pick our moments.
Well, it's really hard. Like it is. It's, there's so many benefits to doing the dream feed and so many benefits to doing it the other way as well. And,
Yes.
it's different. We work with clients differently with how
Yeah.
we would do our own, I
Yeah.
think.
And keep in mind, we don't work very often with newborns. We're
Oh, we
fixing
don't sleep
baby
train.
sleep.
No, no,
No,
no, we don't sleep
no.
train
So
newborns. No,
so
no, no.
this is just, more conversational. It's like this is very much just us having a
Oh,
chat about the dream feed.
yeah.
And but we work with families that have still got it months later, and that's where we've probably taken our learnings from of would we, wouldn't
Also,
we?
one thing, also, I just want to tail it because I know we're finishing up this episode as well. Uh, but may I add that
Mm.
these
You
babies
may.
of ours, may I add, we we didn't sleep train. Like we didn't sleep train,
No.
and they slept beautifully. Like we set the stage for great sleep
Yeah.
habits to it be established and so forth. And when they're sleeping 7 to 7 with a dream feed, they're waking multiple times and putting themselves back off to sleep. Um, so there you can create really clear, healthy sleep habits from the get go to encourage really great sleep for a lifetime. And you may not
Absolutely.
have to do sleep training as such if you put a few things in place at the beginning. Um, yeah, little
Yeah,
things.
I have never actively had to say, right, it's Friday night. My baby's going down in their cot. I'm dropping this sleep association. I am using Furbo. I'm doing modified Furbo. I'm doing pick up, put down. They have just always, from day one, have I worked on independent sleep, a lot of contact naps, a lot of,
Mm.
they're still newborns, but they
Yeah.
have just always had great opportunities to practice independent sleep and finding a weird and wonderful way to settle off to sleep and link sleep cycles from day one. And
Mm.
both of mine sucked their thumb before 16 weeks. And that for me was their secret sauce because I could hear them sucking all night long.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, they're doing it. And so then I knew, oh no, they're crying. That's a feed because
Mm.
I can hear I can literally hear them all night putting themselves to sleep. So yes, you can have great sleep without ever needing to end up actively and formally sleep training.
And then just one little thing on that, it also highlights that babies can sleep through the night without a feed from a really young age. Not we don't we don't actively encourage families to drop feeds. Let me just tell you
No,
that.
no.
But it does highlight that, there's lots of, not families, there's lots of people out there who will tell you it's more normal for your little one to wake overnight and something is wrong if they're not. And
Yeah.
but there are so many cases of little ones who, are the unicorns. Like the moment they come home from hospital, they've slept through the night, all the time. So you hear all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, to that point, we don't look, particularly in these younger months, we don't look to actively drop feed. So I remember I even had someone had been sent to me by or they'd worked with another sleep consultant, and then we had a quick chat, and they said, I want to get rid of the 3 a.m. feed. I've been told I should sleep train
Oh,
out
yeah.
the 3 a.m. feed for my 12-week-old. And
Mm.
I said, I very respectfully and professionally disagree. I think your baby is falling asleep on their own, sleeping all the way till 2 or 3, having a feed and going back down until 7. That is fantastic. There
Yeah.
is a huge amount of social media pressure in particular to have weaned overnight feeds. I mean, Beck, I was telling
Yeah.
you yesterday, I worked with a 5-month-old who had been told by another sleep consultant, no, they hadn't started on solids yet and feeds were a little bit wonky during the day, not to go in at the 3 or 4 a.m. waking.
Yeah.
And then this baby cried and cried and cried and cried. And their intuition said we need to bring back a feed in. They did, but they were left with this really conflicting advice.
Yeah.
So babies are allowed to feed. Babies are allowed to feed
100%.
overnight. And
Yeah.
then we watch and nudge it out in an age appropriate way. We have the soul and yes, some can do it like ours did earlier, and some can hold on to a feed for a little bit longer. This is why we look at baby generally case by case.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be in a super quick hurry to get rid of the feeds overnight,
Yeah.
because you lose confidence when there's an extended waking if it's gone.
Yeah.
And then your settling response becomes a little different. And then all hell will start to break loose.
Yeah. And it all spirals.
It all spirals. So time goes so fast. And I know
Yes.
this now with my 17-year-old. Like they say, in the blink of an eye. And I know that you're in the trenches at 3 and 4 months old, and you're wanting to sort of have a seamless run at night and have, your, all those extra hours of sleep back and whatnot. But hold on. If it's working, the feed is working and they need it, hold on to it, because it won't be long until you can actively move towards eliminating it with extra calories via solids in the mix. So, that's our
And if you are spiraling, reach out to us. We are the spiral queens. Let us fix it for you.
Yeah.
And we will do all the troubleshooting, and you can just go into the night knowing I'm going to feed or I'm going to resettle because the girls have told me this is what time to do everything.
Exactly. We do the thinking.
We'll do the thinking. I'd love to know if anyone's listening to this while they're actually doing a dream feed.
Yeah.
And they got their headphones in, the white noise is blasting out on the other side. And
oh my God, we'd love
so let us know.
Yeah.
Yes, let us know. Okay, well, I think that's us. We could clearly talk about this all day long. We will see you on the next episode of Nap Trapped.
See you later, team. Catch up.
Bye.
Bye.